en el seno de una familia unida que buscaba lidiar con los efectos de la Segunda Guerra Mundial.
Eso solo me hizo más hambriento de que algún día yo quería salir y ser exitoso.
Llegó a ser catalogado como el mejor físico-culturista de todos los tiempos.
Mi padre decía, no te sientes a solo pensar en tu victoria, avanza y ten hambre del siguiente triunfo. Siempre me vi como otro Clint Eastwood, o como un John Wayne, o Kirk Douglas en las películas. Mi clave para el éxito fue no escuchar a los que dicen no.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, en la era de las definiciones.
Muy buenas noches, amigas y amigos. Estamos nuevamente aquí con ustedes. Gracias por recibirnos en su casa. Esta noche tenemos un programa muy especial que fuimos a grabar a la ciudad de Los Ángeles con un superestrella que nos va a dar la oportunidad de conocer más de su vida y la oportunidad de escuchar su ejemplo, que al fin y al cabo, de verdad, es un ejemplo. Arnold, thank you very much for being here with us. It's an honor to have you in this special program, and thank you for accepting our invitation. And
it's my pleasure to be here, and I never thought that I would be interviewed by a president. This is a great honor, especially since I'm an admirer of yours. So it's great to have to do this show with you.
Thank you very much, Arnold. And let's begin with the comment you just made, that you go to Mexico quite frequently and spend some time there, especially filming, producing pictures. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've actually come and went to Mexico ever since I moved to the United States, because I remember in 1968 when I moved here after having won 2 Mr. Universe competitions. I was invited to come here and to train here with Joe Weider. One of the first competitions that came up was in Tijuana. It was the Mr. International competition, organized by Eddie Sylvester, who himself was a Mr. Universe in the 50s. And he organized this great competition, and I went down there and I won the competition, and I won, you know, not only Mr. International, but best back, best arms, best abdominals, best this and that. I came home with a whole bunch of trophies. I said, well, this place, Mexico, is really a great place. Look at all the trophies that I got. So I started to really like Mexico. So I went down to Mexico many times, to Tijuana, to visit throughout the years. But then when I got into movies, one of the movies we shot, one of the first movies was Conan the Destroyer. It was in Mexico City and all over Mexico. And then Total Recall, and then went on, and I actually ended up doing 4 movies in Mexico. Spent always between 3 and 6 months in Mexico, and got to know really the great craftsmanship and the workmanship of the Mexican people.
If it's okay with you, let's go back a little bit in your life. Where were you born? What was your childhood like?
Well, I grew up in Austria. I was born in 1947, 2 years after the Second World War ended. And it was kind of a depressing, I would say, situation, because Austria, Germany, they were the losers of the war. You know, everything that was promised to them by the Führer didn't happen, didn't materialize. People felt like losers. We were occupied by the four nations, by the Soviet Union, by Russia, then the United States, England, and France. And so it was starvation, very poor country, economically suffering tremendously. And my parents had to kind of look from farm to see if they can find some food for the children. But then that, of course, made me just more hungry. And they created the fire in the belly that one day I want to go and be successful, and I want to get out of this environment. And I think it gave me the drive, and I always visualized to come to America and to be part of the America, which was always known as the land of opportunity and kind of the #1 country in the world and all this. And so I think through bodybuilding, I found my way to America, because I started, training 5 hours a day. I started winning weightlifting championships, powerlifting championships, bodybuilding championships, and eventually I became, at the age of 20, the youngest Mr. Universe ever in London. And so the world focused now on this young guy, 20 years old, youngest Mr. Universe. And the year after that, with 21, I won the second Mr. Universe title. And then I was sent an invitation by Joe Weider, who ran the whole bodybuilding empire, the equipment companies, the publishing empire, and all of this, to bring me over here. And I came to America, and then finally my dream to come to America became a reality. But it was a lot of struggle in the beginning. I was also, I studied. I went to the military over there in Austria at the age of 18, was a tank driver. Learned a lot of discipline through the sport and through the military. All of that helped me tremendously in the rest of my life, because I learned a lot of things from sports about discipline, camaraderie, about focusing, keeping your eye on the ball, and all of those things that helped me in everything else that I did after that.
Yeah. I always try to discover the aspects of leadership and how can you build up a successful life. I noticed what you just said, that you have a life of striving and struggling, always fighting and growing yourself and your personality. But does the war, poverty, and the situation, I guess it had an impact in your character and your desire to succeed. And number two, the bodybuilding. What I read from you is that bodybuilding is so important to get that strength that it even comes up to your spirit and your character because of the discipline and the way you have to train.
Right. Well, I think that the struggle makes you strong inside. And when you work, from the time I was 10 years old, I worked as a kid during school vacation. In the winter, I worked during winter vacation. I always worked. And my father he was a disciplinarian because he was in the military, he was a police officer. So for him, it was all about discipline. We had to train every day, play soccer, go skiing and sledding and ice curling with him. And so he always said, be useful. That was always it. So you grow up almost kind of feeling guilty that if you at 6 o'clock in the morning you lie in bed and you haven't already done something. And we always had to we had to get up in the morning, and before we were allowed to have breakfast, we had to do push-ups and sit-ups and knee bends and chin-ups and all kinds of things, because we had to earn the breakfast, as he always said. So he always said, be useful. And so that made me always feel kind of like I got to work, I got to produce, I should not sit, I should not, enjoy a victory. He always said, don't sit around and just, think about your victory. Just move on. Be hungry for the next thing. What's the next thing? And so I always believed in that whole philosophy of staying hungry. But what was really, I think, also a key thing to me to become successful was not to listen to the naysayers. Because I'm sure that you went through that in your life. Yes. There's always people there that say that would never happen, you cannot do that, it's impossible, and all these negative comments. I never paid attention to that because I always had a very clear vision of where I wanted to go in life. I saw myself as the world champion in bodybuilding. I saw myself as another Clint Eastwood or a John Wayne or a Kirk Douglas in the movies, to be up there on top and to be a leading man. And then when I ran for governor, I also saw myself that I could be a leader in the political world. And I believed in that 100%. And I think that is what always helped me, not to listen to the naysayers, but to listen to myself and to believe in my vision.
How do you get the ticket to come to America?
Well, this Joe Weider, who was the publisher of the Muscle magazines, sent me the ticket. And but in bodybuilding, at that time there was no money. So even though I was the champion, I didn't make $1. So when I came over here, he would give me a little bit of money to afford the apartment. But I still had to go to work, and I was like doing construction work. Even though I was a world champion in bodybuilding, I did in the beginning construction work. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine by the name of Franco Colombo, who is another bodybuilding champion and powerlifting champion, he also came over. He's from Italy. And we together started a construction company, a little construction company. And I remember putting the ads in the LA Times saying, European construction experts and masonry experts, special marble work and all this stuff. And right after that, the earthquake happened in Los Angeles. And so we got so many phone calls, and we were all over building chimneys, building fireplaces, building patios, rebuilding walls, and all kinds of things. And we were making our money so we could afford the food supplements, and so we could afford the steaks and the chicken and all the good proteins that we needed to get to be strong. We were working on our education. We were working, doing construction work. We were working out in the gym. And so it was like I literally only slept 6 hours a day. And the rest of it I worked or studied and did something. And we had a great time doing it because we had this opportunity to grow mentally, physically, and to make some money and all this. It was a great time.
I noticed that in most European migrants, always that passion to work and to build and to have a dream. But only this land, America, offered to comply with the promise. Really, in this land, everybody that came here had the opportunity to start some venture and grow with it, which is your case. And here again, we have to notice that hard working, that passion is what makes you accomplish dreams. Now you're in America. You have your small construction company. You keep bodybuilding, and at the same time, how do you get into the movie industry?
Well, it was part of my plan because there was a bodybuilding champion by the name of Reg Park and Steve Reeves. They won Mr. Universe, and then they were discovered in Rome and Cinecittà, and they did Hercules movies. So I said to them, when I read their stories in the Muscle magazines, I said to myself, wow, this is really great. My whole life is laid out here. They would train 5 hours a day. They won the world championships in bodybuilding. They became movie stars, even though they only did Hercules movies. But to me, as a 15-year-old kid, they were big movie stars. And they made the millions of dollars. They got into the gym business. They became successful business operators. Wow, this is the life that I want. And so that became my model. So I always had that vision that eventually, after my bodybuilding career, I will get into film. So in 1975, I retired from bodybuilding. I won 7 Mr. Olympia titles and altogether 13 World Championship titles. I retired, and I put all of this effort, this 5 hours a day of training, instead of just training 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time I spent in acting. I took voice lessons, accent removal lessons, English lessons, acting lessons. I mean, everything that you can think of, I did in order to really get good in acting. And eventually, even though the agents and the producers and the studio executives all said, Arnold, you're too big. The new sex symbols are Dustin Hoffman and Al Pacino and Woody Allen. They're all little guys. You're too big, forget it. It won't happen. We help you with your bodybuilding, maybe with the gym business, but you can never become a leading man. But I didn't listen again to the naysayers. And I just worked hard, and eventually I started doing some television shows. Streets of San Francisco, then we did the documentary Pumping Iron. Then I did the movie Stay Hungry with Sally Fields and Jeff Bridges. And then I did Conan the Barbarian. I signed this contract for several Conan movies, and all of a sudden it all happened. And so I really started building my name as an actor and as an international actor and as a leading man. And the Terminator was a huge breakthrough. So it then happened very quickly, and my salary doubled in each of the films. And eventually, with Terminator 3, I became the highest paid actor, and so I had the last laugh on that one, because even though the agents and the studio executives said it would never happen, but my career took off. I think, again, just in America, because I don't think that in Austria I could have done that, or in Germany, or in any other country in the world I could have done that. It's here, it was like this open mind on the end, where people said, yeah, why not? I mean, here's an accent. But even the accent worked to my advantage, because I remember when on my body, because when I did Conan, John Milius, the director, said if we wouldn't have had Schwarzenegger, we would have had to build one. So because the body was perfect for the Conan movies. And then when I did Terminator, Jim Cameron said, if Schwarzenegger wouldn't have had that accent, I don't think the line "I'll be back" would have worked. I think because he talks like a machine, he's believable as the machine. And so I think all of those things work to my advantage on the end.
So physical strength, mental strength, spiritual strength, but at the very end, the soul and heart of a compassionate leader, which we're going to speak about that. Arnold, let's go to third phase. Your origin, bodybuilding, professional and successful professional, then a movie star, a superhero, but then you all of a sudden come and decide to go into politics. I did my own change in life. I was all the time in private sector business, and then all of a sudden I moved to politics. Reasons why?
Well, first of all, I did read your story, and you were a great inspiration, because I thought it was fantastic to come from the private sector and then for you to get into politics. And I always thought that because of that, you never really looked like a politician. Mm-hmm. I mean, you always looked like a leader, but not a politician, because I think people are sick and tired of the typical politicians. And so I thought that, I think that California at that time, when it was going through a crisis, needed someone from the outside. But the idea of public service was nothing new to me, because I started out back in 1977 already working with Special Olympics and giving some of my time to train Special Olympians, to build their confidence and to get them ready for sports and so on, because I always was a big believer that people that have any kind of mental disabilities or intellectually challenged should also be able to participate in sports or work or live anywhere they want and get health care and all of those things. So I started getting involved in Special Olympics. Then I eventually became the national and international weight training coach for the Special Olympians, and traveled all around the world to start Special Olympics in Austria and in other countries, and to train Special Olympians, to inspire them, and to help the organization that my mother-in-law started way back in the 60s. Then I started after-school programs. I was 20 years ago, I started with after-school programs because I felt that so many children in inner cities and poor kids, don't get the equal education that other wealthier kids get. And after-school program was one way of solving that problem by keeping kids in the afternoons in the school, to give them tutoring and homework assistance, and to give them adult supervision so they don't go out and get involved in crimes and juvenile crimes and so on, teenage pregnancy and so on. So I spent many hours in that, traveling around the country, setting up after-school programs and so. And I think that after I became the chairman of the President's Council on Fitness under President Bush #1, I traveled to all 50 states, and the more I did this kind of work, the more joy I found. And I've always was wondering, like, why is that? I went home at night many times when I was traveling around and promoting fitness or promoting Special Olympics or after-school programs, and I said to myself, Arnold, you're not making any money here. It's not a career move. Why are you so happy? And so I realized that I broke that mirror in front of me that made me always look at myself, and I was able to look beyond that mirror and see the millions of people that needed help. And I was so excited about that. So when the election and when that special election came up in California, I felt like maybe it's time for me kind of to just stop the acting, not worry about making the $30 million a movie and all of those things and career moves, but maybe just to jump into that arena, even though very risky, where you get beaten up by the press all the time and where people attack you and the opposition attacks and all this. But I felt like, you know, it's just in my heart that I should do it. And so I jumped in, and I had that conversation with Maria, with my wife. She was not very fond of the idea because she comes from a political family and she has gone through all of the dramas of politics. And so she was worried. But I felt so passionate about it that I finally, I think her mother talked her into and said, look, when a man has that feeling, I know from my brothers, you know, then you got to let them go. And so I think that Maria eventually just said, okay, let's do it. And I felt great about that, and I jumped into the race. I remember I announced 10 years ago, it was on the Tonight Show on August 6th. I told Jay Leno that I'm going to jump into the race, and then 2 days later I registered as a candidate, and then the campaign began, and 2 months later I was governor there. It was amazing. There was like 135 candidates, the wackiest candidates you can imagine, but all of that was, of course, funny and very entertaining. And I slowly could emerge from behind and work my way up and finally win the race. And so it was, I think it was one of the best decisions that I've made in my life. Then becoming governor and going in there and taking on those challenges was somewhat overwhelming, obviously, because you sit in his office and you are responsible for everything. But it was fantastic to now serve the people of California, the 38 million people of California, full time, and to spend 24 hours a day just on that job.
Yeah. This is the mirror. I see myself in this mirror. I see myself in you, because I share and I lived exactly what you have just described. And especially when you say that being for others, doing for the community is what really at the end brings joy to our heart, and that's the big reward.
Yes.
Not money. And I guess you felt the same that I did. A big weight, big stone in my shoulders the moment they told me you won.
It was very challenging because normally you have a certain amount of time to prepare a campaign. It all was very quickly. I mean, you decide one day, then you have to quickly hire your team, but you only have 2 months, and then October 7th and August 6th I announced, and on August 8th I registered, and then October 7th, like 2 months later, was the election. So I had to put the team together, and I had to show leadership right out of the gate. So campaigning was very much fun. I thought to go around and to talk about my passion and what I would do with California, what are the steps I would take to bring the economy back and to create jobs and to protect the environment, and all of those kind of issues I talked about. And then as time went on, I learned very quickly about issues that I never even thought about. And from then on, it was a clear victory. But then when you get into that office, of course, now you have to put a team together that helps you run the state. And it was very difficult because the Republican Party is not really the strong party of the state of California. The Democrats have a lot of the talent. The Republicans don't have as much of the talent. So therefore it was much harder to pull together a team. Luckily, I was not stuck in ideology. Good. So therefore, I was able to hire some of the Democratic talents and some of the Republican talent. And I always felt like that I want to make decisions based on what is best for the state and what is best for the people, rather than what is best for my party. So therefore, there was always big battles between my party, the Republican Party, and me. And also I had my battles with the Democratic Party because they wanted me to do what they wanted me to do. So you got caught in the middle, but that was perfectly fine. But that's, I just felt like that I'm a public servant and not a party servant. And so I wanted to, follow that rule and that kind of a vision. I brought together Democrats and Republicans, and we were able, because of that, to do a lot of things. One of the most wonderful things, which was always my big dream, was to rebuild California. Mm-hmm. And so we were able, after 3 years, to pass a whole bunch of initiatives to rebuild our transportation system, to rebuild our schools, affordable housing, our levees, the water system, and all of those kind of things, to really rebuild California, because we were living off stuff that was done in the 60s and in the 50s, and nothing after that. So that was a great, great victory. And also, of course, the stem cell research victory, the vote for $3 billion to really do research on stem cell, and the environmental issues that we have accomplished, to protect the environment, the water, the air, the tailpipe emissions reductions, and the Green Building Initiative, AB 32 to reduce the greenhouse gases in California, and to do all kinds of stuff that no one expected of a Republican to do, because those are normally democratic issues, but I saw them again as people's issues. And so we did a lot of really terrific work in that, and good government practice, redistricting, and so on. And there was a wonderful a bunch of stuff that we got done, but also you go through the frustration because you can't get everything done. You have this list of things that you want to accomplish, and like one of the issues was like the budget. I promised always that I'm going to go and fix the budget, so we're going to wipe out the deficit. Well, we did wipe out the deficit by 2007, and then came the recession, and we went right back into where we started, right? The unemployment rate went up again, the deficit went up, the debt went up, and everything started reversing. So that was kind of more the frustrating part of being in that office, that you really can't solve all of the problems, and I was disappointed about that, but we solved a lot of problems and did a lot of great, great work, and one just has to realize that you can't do it all.
Yeah, and it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
It happens. To be a good governor, a good president, you need to be very close to people, understand people, but you need good luck also.
That's right.
Because otherwise, in Mexico, where is it? California is neighboring with Mexico. What contact, did you meet with the people, authorities on the border? Where was Mexico in your planning and your work as governor?
Well, we looked at them as our neighbors. And therefore, one of the first things we did was go on a trade mission, for instance, to Mexico.
I remember.
To do business with Mexico and to figure out ways of how to take, for instance, what we have in Silicon Valley, the technology and all of this, how do we do the same thing in Mexico? How do we help the Mexicans to build their own Silicon Valley and to have technology and create the jobs? How do we, through our working relationship, create more jobs for California and more jobs for Mexico? It's never a one-way street. You always have to think about what's good for us and how can we help also the other countries. If I go to China, if I go to Mexico, to Canada, you always have to think about the other countries also. So that's what we did, and we always pushed very hard the federal government on immigration reform, for instance, because I felt like that there's a lot of talented people coming from Mexico, and it is a shame that we have, 12 million people that are undocumented in America, and it's because of a crazy kind of an immigration system that has proven not to work, and it needed to be reformed. And so we always said, let's go and try to figure out a way of reforming and creating a comprehensive reform for immigration. And of course, now 10 years later, we're still talking about that. And hopefully this year they get it done, because I think that Democrats and Republicans have worked on it long enough, they've compromised enough. Hopefully they will come to some kind of a conclusion and have reform, because it's a long time overdue.
Yeah, this is a key issue, and I'd like to spend the rest of the program after we go to a break precisely talking about what you're doing today, which I think is most important and strategic, and how do you envision the future.
Right.
Vamos a un corte y regresamos con ustedes.